I also ascribe our ability to think, to reason, to love, to build, to create as divine, because it's amazing that we exist.
Well, how come? Proposition A, our existence is amazing. Proposition B, God gave us the ability to think. How does B follow from A? Where's the causal relationship? Is this your idea of skepticism? If this is not flirting with intelligent design, I don't know what is.
Like, do you ever get that feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we exist?
No, never. But that's beside the point. Look, you can express disbelief over your existence however many times you want. The conclusion still won't follow. You find it hard sometimes to believe that you exist. Therefore, you conclude that God exists. Your existence is highly improbable. Therefore, God's existence is 100% certain. See intelligent design. Do you even realize what kind of ideology you're aligning yourself with as a scientist?
I get that feeling all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Other people in other parts of the world, meanwhile, don't get that feeling a lot because, unlike you and me, they actually have to work for a living. They don't have the surplus of time to be so delightfully surprised over the tedious and trivial fact of their existence.
A closeness with a notion of God gives me the opportunity to experience myself as a spiritual being and not just a physical or a mental one.
What's a closeness with a notion of God? What's a spiritual being? In what precise way is experiencing yourself as a spiritual being different from experiencing yourself as a physical being or a mental being? Spirituality means a million different things, none of which really mean anything at all. It's an empty word, and it's an awfully sticky word, you know? You throw it on anything, it'll stick. I'm an Indian. We practically invented this bullshit.
But having a relationship with God gives me a chance to understand my inner world in a way that can't be measured by inches or SAT scores or HDL-LDL ratios or by diplomas hung on the wall commemorating learned information.
Inner world, the world in here. What's in there? Well, apart from matter, there are fleeting thoughts and transient feelings and floating memories running all over the place. Understanding your inner world, apart from the anatomy therefore, essentially amounts to understanding the precise nature of thoughts and feelings and memories, or the physical processes and phenomena that generate thoughts and feelings and store and retrieve them as memories, or the means and mechanisms by which this inner world interacts with the outer world. Inquiries of such nature fall squarely within the domain of science and/or philosophy. How's your relationship with God gonna help you understand any of it? It won't. I'll tell you why. Let's assume that the inner worlds of all human beings are similar in form and function. That's a reasonable assumption to make, right? Now, if the relationship with God helped people understand their own inner worlds, the collective faith of all the religious people who have ever lived would have given us a very rich and an almost complete understanding by now of the human inner world. Do we have anything even close to that? You're a neuroscientist, you tell me. Now let's come to the second part about measurement. Specifically, measuring the way by which having a relationship with God helps us understand our inner world. Now, when we measure something, when we measure a quantity, we actually compute the ratio of the magnitude of that quantity with an agreed upon magnitude of the same quantity. To say that this table is 4 feet long is to say that the length of this table is 4 times the agreed upon magnitude of length, denoted as 1 foot. Do we have an agreed upon magnitude of the way by which having a relationship with God helps us understand our inner world? Is the definition of this agreed upon magnitude rigorous enough for said measurement to be reproducible, at least under controlled conditions? This is guru talk. It does not befit a scientist. Also, it seems to me that Mayim doesn't value the diplomas hung on her wall, but some of us actually worked hard on our diplomas, and for us, they don't merely commemorate learned information. We don't get a PhD for learned information in India. Do you?
It can be measured by the way it feels when you read a poem or a psalm and you feel like someone out there understands you and there is a purpose to continuing your existence. It can be measured by the way it feels when your stomach flip-flops over and drops to the ground when you stare into the eyes of someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with. It can be measured by the enormity of emotions you feel when you look at the Milky Way or when your baby smiles at you for the first time. It can be measured by the depths of despair that you feel when someone breaks your heart. And it can also be measured by the hope you feel when you know that you will love again.
What Mayim is now proposing is to use one of these emotionally charged instances as an agreed upon magnitude to measure, remember, to measure the way by which having a relationship with God helps us understand our inner world. But the pleasure of reading the poem is not and can never be an agreed upon magnitude, nor can the pain of heartbreak. It makes no sense to employ a unit of measurement that's so transparently subjective. It's pointless to try to measure something when no two observers can agree as to the precise magnitude of a given amount of that thing. But just because we can't measure something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It might very well exist, but you have to offer something by way of proof. Poetry and babies and love and heartbreak by themselves do not constitute a proof for the existence of God. What they do constitute is an appeal to emotions, otherwise known as emotional blackmail. Oh, and by the way, you cannot feel an enormity of emotions when you look at the Milky Way. I mean, no one can. You can think about the enormity of a crime, totally unrelated, while looking at the Milky Way. But I doubt anyone will. I don't know, next time, try immensity of emotions.
So what do I get from religion? Well, my religious practice gives me discipline.
Whoa, hold on there. What happened to babies smiling at you for the first time? What does discipline have to do with babies and poetry and music and love and heartbreak? Before we can talk about something, you pivot and pick some other thing to talk about. Apparently, religious practice gives you all sorts of discipline, except discipline of thought. So what? You pray a few times a day and you think that makes you disciplined. That's not discipline. You're confusing discipline with routine.
It's normal and healthy for human beings to have boundaries, and I guess to what extent you want them is kind of up to you.
If I'm free to decide my own boundaries, it's not much of a boundary in the first place, is it? And if I can decide the extent of my boundaries, the fuck do I need religion for? Religions are famous for imposing boundaries. They're not known for letting people decide the extent of their boundaries. And boundaries are a subject of ethics, which is one of the things you study in philosophy. Pick any one of the hundreds of undergrad level introduction to philosophy texts. Any one of them is vastly better at educating us on the topic of boundaries than any organized religion ever devised by mankind. You know why? Because philosophy doesn't rely on faith. Like science, it relies on reason.
For me, my religious tradition helps me to think hard about decisions I make.
To the best of my understanding, all that religious traditions do is obfuscate the decision-making process. For example, bearing a child is good because gift of God. Premarital sex, bad because it's sex. Well, what are you supposed to think about a child born out of wedlock? What do you think about abortions and stem cell research? Please don't tell me that your religious tradition helps you in thinking about questions like that. I know it doesn't, or at least I hope it doesn't. Otherwise, Mayim, think about it. You wouldn't have recanted your stand on open relationships, which was indeed a brave thing to do, by the way. I applaud you for it.
I only eat certain foods. I make it a priority not to gossip, to learn to be more compassionate, to find ways to repair the world, to meditate, to seek justice and pursue it. All of these things are guided by the structure of my religious faith.
Okay, none of these things have anything to do with religious faith. First, only eating certain foods. I believe Mayim is talking about veganism here. Well, atheists have champions of that cause too, and their arguments are, objectively speaking, a hell of a lot more persuasive than any religious argument I've ever heard or can possibly hear in defense of veganism. Second, gossip. Here's the dictionary definition. Gossip, an informal conversation about other people and their private lives. That's basically religion, so it's hardly surprising that you have to make it a priority not to gossip. Third, justice and compassion. Well, if you're serious about these things, I'd strongly suggest that you start with losing religion, because historically, religion has never aided justice, it has only obstructed it. Second of all, you cannot be truly compassionate and religious because in the act of upholding religious faith, you're turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to the tyranny and exploitation meted out by organized religions the world over on a daily basis. Also, a case could be made that one of the most effective ways of repairing the world is to equip people with the tools they need to rid themselves of the faith in the supernatural. Fourth, meditation. And I don't know, how is that a virtue? You choose to spend 15 minutes or whatever every day doing nothing, or inhaling and exhaling, thinking positive thoughts, being mindful of the energy that pulses within you. Good for you. Don't pretend as if you're doing a favor to the rest of the world. You're just sitting on your ass, putting farts into your yoga mat.
And I'm inspired by the notion of a responsibility to a universe that is governed by something bigger than me.
If the universe is indeed governed by something, you have zero responsibility. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. It's not like the universe is a democratic government. I'm curious though, would you be inspired by the notion of a responsibility to a universe that wasn't governed by anything? My God, what would such a universe even look like?
It's okay for smart people to believe in religion.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the central thesis, that it's okay for smart people, scientists like Mayim, to believe in religion. I don't know why this needs to be emphasized when the majority of scientists and smart people are religious anyway. Of course it is okay. So is masturbating 20 times a day. Doesn't mean you should. What's kinda not okay for scientists is to go out of their way to defend religious faith in public. It's regressive and it's morally reprehensible.
And we aren't always happy with how religion looks or how religious people act.
That's okay. I mean, we aren't always happy with how atheism looks either. But as far as the central thesis is concerned, those are just disclaimers.
But there's a force in the universe that underlies all of this beautiful chaos.
Yes, we already conceded that there's a force or a system of forces. There cannot be chaos, beautiful or otherwise, without force. Our problem is with religion ascribing agency to this force without an iota of proof.
And understanding the relationship between science and God, I think, makes me a better scientist and a more complete person. So I'm sticking to that.
There is no relationship between science and God. None, period. Science is an enterprise that thrives on doubt. Religion is an enterprise that thrives on faith. Faith extinguishes doubt, and doubt is corrosive to faith. They are opposites. Being religious therefore makes you a worse scientist by definition. How much worse depends on how much a scientist allows religion to intrude in her work. I don't know precisely what you mean by more complete person, but a scientist should try to be a more complete scientist first, because that's what pays his bills. He can be a more complete person on his own time. I'm sticking to that.
Subscribe to my channel.
Subscribe to The Scientific Method.
See you next time.
Same. Thank you for listening. Dhanyavad. Shukriya.